Quintessential Rebel Podcast. It's been an exciting journey so far. Listen, if you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and take a second and just do that. Go ahead and click the subscribe button, like, share, comment. We also want to hear your thoughts and your opinions on the topics we've had so far and any other topic you would like for us to carry on this channel. Today we have the distinct honor and privilege of having a very distinguished woman in our midst. Dr. Renee Campbell is a dedicated social worker, educator, and international humanitarian whose passion for generosity stems from her upbringing in Adville, Kentucky. Inspired by the selflessness of her mother and great aunt, she has spent over 40 years advocating for children, families, and survivors of intimate partner violence and substance addiction. Now semi-retired, she continues her mission as the Director of Programs for a social services organization while also providing individual therapy. Her work extends beyond social services as she co-leads the Mrs. Campbell movement, honoring her grandmother's legacy and bringing awareness to medical neglect. Beyond her professional impact, Dr. Campbell is a proud mother of three children and grandmother of seven. Check her out. Cherishing the continuation of her family's legacy, she emphasizes the importance of respect, listening, and perseverance. These are values that have shaped her journey. She's a strong believer in faith and resilience. She encourages others to overcome barriers and pursue their dreams. Inspired by Dr. Wayne Dyer's Your Erroneous Zones, she has embraced the power of positive thinking, a lesson she hopes to pass on through her work, advocacy, and mentorship. Looking ahead, she plans to extend her movement's reach, fund sponsorships, and one day fulfill her dream of traveling to Hawaii. She's a chief in Ghana, and she is Muhammad Ali, Daughters of Greatness. She's one of Muhammad Ali, Daughters of Greatness. Without further ado, please help me to welcome the one and only Dr. Renee Campbell. Chief Renee Campbell. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Before we start on this journey that you have been on for many decades, I'd like for you to share with us your upbringing, your childhood, and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. So I come from humble beginnings in Adairsville, Kentucky.
Okay.
I was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado. My father was in the Army at the time, and my mother was in Colorado, living above someone's garage and helping them in their household. Daddy sent my name home when I was born.
Okay.
From France, that's where he was. So Renee is French.
Okay.
And so he sent me that name. The Maltana comes from my chief name.
Okay.
Which is in Ghana, and which I felt like I was being reborn in time when that happened to me. And then Ann is my mother's cousin.
Okay.
And then Campbell, of course, is my father's name.
Okay.
And so humble beginnings in Adairsville, Kentucky. Of course, when I was born, I was a preemie. I was 4 pounds, 12 and a half ounces when I was born.
You were 4 pounds?
4 pounds, 12 and a half ounces.
Wow.
And so, looking back, I say that the reason I was able to survive is because I was born in an Army hospital.
Okay.
And my father was in the Army. And the best doctors were there. And so they took care of me. Since I was born in 1955, looking back in history and what was going on then, who cared about a little black baby that was 4 pounds, 12 and a half ounces. So I feel very blessed.
Yeah.
When I was 2, I finally met my father when he came home from the Army.
Okay.
And then we moved to Adairville, Kentucky,
Okay.
where we stayed until I was about 12. And then my mother wanted us to have better opportunities because Jim Crow was still going on, even though she was had a certificate in secretarial science and my father had a certificate in shoe repair. They weren't able to really get jobs in their field. And so we ended up moving.
Wow. Talk to us about, after you moved, you went to school, obviously graduated, and then started on this path, this professional path. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Okay. I was a very, very shy child. And I had, some things happen to me when I was younger, 5 or 6 years old, when I was molested by a family member.
Wow.
And today they call it fondling, which I hate that name. But anyway, I told my mother. She confronted the abuser. He left town. We never talked about it again. So I was always very shy, very self-conscious. At that time, 50s and 60s, people didn't necessarily think that black was beautiful. So I grew up believing that I was very unattractive. And so when I got to graduate school, I had 2 professors, Dr. Gail Goldberg and Dr. Ruth Middleman. And the director of the Kent School of Social Work, the dean, told me that they wanted me, that they saw me and they would like to take me under their wing.
Okay.
And at that time I was like, wow, they want me? Why do they want me? And he said, which, he probably wouldn't say that today, he said, Renee, they would like to have you. I don't know why, but they would like to have you. And I was thinking, well, I don't know why either. And so they took me under their wing, and so I was in their field practicum, which is something that all social work students have to do so they can get practice in the field of social work.
Yeah.
And so one day we were doing a practice called Gestalt, and where they instructed me to practice using the technique, but then they had me be the client and one of the other students to be the clinician. And so we were talking, and they asked the question, Renee, why don't you feel like that you are, what you have to say is important? And so, and I had to play the child that they were actually talking about. So I had to play that like 3rd grade child. And so I thought about it as pretending I'm the child, and then all of a sudden I had this memory of being in the 3rd grade, and I was very eager to have the right answer. And I held my hand up and I gave the answer, and it was the wrong answer. And so all of the children laughed at me. So me being a shy, feeling unattractive, poor black girl influenced me to not want to ever say anything again. And so I didn't.
Wow.
I didn't participate in class. I was just quiet. So I always got A's in citizenship. And so when I discovered doing that Gestalt exchange that it was the children, they asked me the question, Renee, how long are you going to let those little children control you? And it's like a light went off. And I said, I'm not going to let them control me. So from that time on, I began to speak up, give my opinions. I was validated by that group of people. I continued to do that and just continued to evolve as I went along. And so that was like a peak experience for me during that time in graduate school. Just think about it, master's degree in social work, working on that, but shy. And at the beginning of that experience, those professors were able to bring that out of me. And so that fueled me.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a lot to unpack. But what we're going to do is, there's so many questions and conversations that we're going to tackle as a result of that. The first thing that comes to mind is you made a comment about not feeling beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you feel that way as a result of the molestation? And we're gonna address molestation separately.
Mm-hmm.
But was that before or after, or was that how you always felt? Even
That
as a
was
little kid?
after the molestation. However, I always felt very self-conscious.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because, like in the days when I was being brought up, and because of our family circumstances, we didn't have much at all, so we got a lot of hand-me-downs.
Okay.
And so I remember, like, as a little girl wearing a girdle, and maybe that was because, there weren't any underwear, but still I had a body image, and then because of the molestation, I felt very self-conscious, and that maybe as a 6-year-old, which is crazy, that maybe I did something to make that happen, which I didn't.
I'm glad you said that.
He would have done whatever he wanted to do, whether or not, it didn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I remember when I went to therapy, I remembered what happened. And I was in my 30s then, my early 30s, and I told my therapist, I said, well, she asked me, she said, Renee, have you ever been molested? Is anybody? And I said, yes, I remembered it. And then I followed it by saying, why would anybody want to molest somebody that was that ugly as a little girl? And so she said, oh, Renee, I mean, she had a huge reaction. And then she explained to me that didn't matter, that he was a pedophile, that was wrong. It was not my fault, and all of that. And that it's not your fault. I mean, if someone takes advantage of a little girl that's 5 or 6 years old, and that person is 21.
Even at any age at all.
Any age.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, and it's never okay.
It's never okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you feel that over the years, the perception of yourself has that changed?
Absolutely, and I'm so happy. And I had indicators all throughout my childhood. I mean, I had compliments when I got to college. I was on the Queen's Court. When I was in high school, I was a runner-up for the basketball queen. So there were all kind of indicators, and my parents never made me feel like that I was unattractive. They thought I was beautiful.
Yes.
But it was
and you are beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was that internal dialogue that really hurt me, that I did to myself, but other people helped.
Yeah.
But I did that to myself. Partly, I mean, the colorism that goes on, that being dark-skinned stuff.
Aren't you happy though that it's changing? It has changed over the years.
It has.
Because back in the day, I mean, you of course way older than I am, and you can speak more to this. But back in the day, if you were not light-skinned, you were not deemed beautiful.
That's right.
Or if there were specific roles like in movies or whatnot, you were not called on if you were not light-skinned. And now I see our chocolate melanin goddesses finally embracing their beauty, and I'm oh my goodness, we allow society to dictate to us what was deemed beautiful, and I'm so glad that as a people we're beginning to realize that narrative is false, and to see our young ladies who are darker skinned now embracing themselves and their beauty and being confident about it. It is so amazing to see.
It really is. I'm so happy. And I remember the James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And I remember Jet magazine having Cicely Tyson, Ebony having Cicely Tyson on the front of the magazine. And that inspired me because I looked at that and I said, wow. Yeah. They're black and beautiful, I'm black and beautiful. So I raised my children to believe that and to not have any of that colorism stuff. We'd be walking down the street and I'd see someone in our community that would come, down the street that was very dark skinned, and I would point to my children and I would say, Look at that beautiful black woman.
You were intentional
Look,
about
intentionally. Look at
instilling
that
it
beautiful
in
black
them.
man.
Yes.
Isn't that color so pretty?
Yeah.
And so now my children, they're grown. I mean, I have, you know, a 48-year-old, I have a 38-year-old.
You have a 48-year-old?
Yes.
She has a 48-year-old. What fountain
Yes.
of youth water are you drinking from?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and a 39-year-old. And
Wow.
so I've raised them and I've submerged them in the black culture
Yeah.
intentionally.
Yeah.
And so they're doing that with their children now.
Okay. Let's go back, and I want to believe that over time, going to therapy and healing, I don't think it ever goes away, but maybe your response to it is much different now.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about the abuse that you faced. What helped you to either forgive or not, or to get through that? Because as a small girl,
Mhm.
having to deal with such a terrible form of abuse, any abuse is terrible.
Mhm.
A sexual abuse and molestation. What helped you to overcome the trauma, or how traumatic is it still up till date?
Okay, thank you. That's such a great question. You know, I think that my upbringing, and number one, I think spirituality. Because a lot of people that are abused turn to doing a lot of devious things.
Yes.
And so because of the spirituality, the spiritual grounding that I had from my family, especially my Aunt Lottie, I was not going to act out and become promiscuous. All right, I was just not going to do that. You could, if somebody aroused certain instincts in you at a young age, so you could do that. So I did not do that. I also found a way to turn my anger and resentment and hurt into healing, into helping others.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. So at a very early age, I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to be a social worker.
I was just about to ask if that was your motivation to
but not just
inspire
the
you to-
molestation, just the humble beginnings, not having maybe everything that you needed and stuff to be healthy, having to be a little adult at a young age and everything. Really, I turned all of that into, okay, I'm going to help people. This is how I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm going to study social work. And I'm going to also study what are those things in my life, in my environment, that influenced me to be who I am and to have the feelings that I had. I'm a very analytical person, so I wanted to understand why. All right. And so being in social work school helped me. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about the influence of your parents, especially your mom growing up, and your father as well, and then tied also to how they responded after you told your parents or told your mom, and also add to it the power of forgiveness.
Okay. So I told my mother. She went and confronted him. Remember, that was during Jim Crow, so I was 5 or 6. So that means that was 1960, 1961. And so I told her. She did not tell my father because she thought my father would have to go to jail. And so
we know
who
that
wanted a
is.
black man to be going to jail at that time. So she never told him. And I don't even know if Daddy even knew. But Mama knew. And the big thing is that she believed me. Now, many times when girls come and tell their mothers, the mothers call them liars. You know, I witnessed that over and over and over.
That's a whole other
over
conversation.
again. Yeah. So that didn't happen to me
conversation.
though. You know, so Mama did that.
Okay.
You know, I have a friend that says that she doesn't necessarily forgive, but she acknowledges that it happens. Happened?
Yeah.
And so I acknowledge that it happened.
Happens. Yeah.
You know, I am not going around harboring bad feelings, you know, for all of these years.
Yeah.
For him, I don't have any feelings for him at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand what happened. I understand that he took advantage of me. I understand that it was wrong.
Yes.
You know, do I hate him? I don't have it that hate to waste on somebody that's like him at all.
Yeah.
I won because I survived.
Yes.
And I was able to help other people because of my experiences with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us about, as a social worker, as a therapist, how do you maintain your mental health? Because, I ask my friends who are therapists all the time, I said, you're pouring into others. Who pours into you? How do you keep your cup filled up?
I'm a very spiritual person.
Okay.
I wouldn't call myself a religious person, but I am very spiritual in that I think that all religions have a thread of truth through them, just so they're not worshiping the devil. And so I read a lot, and so that is my validation. You know, you mentioned Dr. Wayne Dyer. Well, I was introduced to him in 1977 through his books, Your Erroneous Zones. And so at that time, I didn't have a peer group that was really doing the things that I was doing. I wanted to do the things that I was doing.
Yeah.
So I kind of read him, and that was my inspiration. So your inspiration to me doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's right there in your environment. It can be somebody that's not.
Yeah.
And so today I have a handful of very close friends, and then I also have my family. And also my extended family that pours into me. Yeah. And so it's a very trusting group of people, and I think that's important when you're doing the kind of work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then I have a couple of therapists that I can talk to, and
because a therapist needs a therapist.
And I've had plenty of it. I've had like 4 or 5 years of really good therapy that helped me to be grounded.
Yeah.
And then the books that I read help to support and validate me.
What do you think about our culture, our Black culture, our African culture, that does not necessarily encourage therapy? I know times have changed, and the word therapy is coming up more often in conversations. But I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe our community is still far behind when it comes to the relevance, the acceptance of therapy. How important do you think it is for us as a people to embrace therapy?
From everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, we're scared. And who wouldn't be after coming from what we came from as far as our ancestors? Being enslaved and brainwashed and every ugly thing that you can think of. So who wouldn't be scared? Who wouldn't be scared of even the medical professional? I think that it's important to have a lot of discernment and listen to your gut, and I'm talking about right here, your gut, when you are talking to a therapist and when you are thinking about, do you want to have this person as your therapist? I think you have to listen to your gut.
Okay. But what you're saying is therapy is important.
Therapy is
choose
very
your therapist
important.
wisely.
Choose your therapist wisely. I tell people it's like buying shoes. You know, you try on this pair of shoes.
Pretty, but it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's uncomfortable. So I think pay attention to yourself.
Yeah.
And also, you have a right to ask questions. Any therapist is going to be fine with you asking questions.
Yeah.
If they're not fine with you asking questions, then I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think absolutely, you know, we as Black people, we need therapy.
Yeah.
Not just because of the things that are hurting us and affecting us and making us sad daily, but from a historical perspective. And I think we need people that understand that historical perspective, and that we have memories in our body, in our bones, in our marrow, in our cells. There's memories in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certain things trigger those memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about you being one of Muhammad Ali's Daughters of Greatness. Talk to us about how you became one, how the journey has been, and how do you view women in leadership? Because you are a leader as well, so can you speak to that?
So years ago, I guess it was in 2013, I think, Aaron Herbert called me and said that I had been selected, as a Muhammad Ali Daughter of Greatness, and I was like, "Are you sure?"
Really? Why did you question that?
Huh? So anyway,
that's such a huge honor.
I said it's a huge honor,
Yes.
and I'm thinking, I don't really look at like my accomplishments as like things that I don't know that anybody would think was that important, and isn't everybody doing that? But it's a big honor, and I am so happy that I would have my name included as with Muhammad Ali, and that he was the greatest, and to be a daughter of greatness says that you've done great things, and that you have contributed to your community. And so, like, social work is not like work to me, it's a calling. So I guess that's why I was asking why, because I'm doing what I'm called to do. And so I think as a person who came from humble beginnings, who had people in my life to help me outside of my family, I think that it is my duty to reach back and help others along. And so I think women in leadership have a huge responsibility. And the biggest part of that is to bring somebody else along. Mentor somebody. I think mentoring is a big deal. And you can mentor somebody from afar or somebody that, is close. But I think mentorship and taking that responsibility as a woman leader is important, because you're going to be able to encourage and inspire. What is your message to young girls, especially young black girls? That I think one of the most important things is keep your self-esteem intact, have a positive self-esteem. Because the messages you give yourself are so much more powerful. Sometimes than the messages that others give you, and there should be a positive message, always. And don't ever ignore your values for someone else. Don't do that. And that expect that in this world, this universe, there are fluctuations. So you're going to have things that are going to go like this, and then they're going to go like this. It's the natural order of things. And so don't get discouraged when things get hard. Things are going to become difficult. Don't give up. Like Harriet Tubman said, keep going. When it's hard, keep going. That's only a comma, not a period. You're just in that place right now. You're going to go someplace else. Like we had that bad winter, challenging winter, now it's spring, and we see the little flowers popping up. Okay? That's the way it is in life. Keep going. Your self-esteem is your most valuable asset. Well, we're going to talk about something fun, which is your time in Ghana, being a chief, and then also your trips to Ghana. How was that experience, and when do you plan to go back? Okay. Well, me becoming a chief in Ghana was a big surprise to me. I had no idea. I had traveled there through sister cities of Louisville, and I always wanted to go and see where I came from. And then when I got there, I saw people that were so beautiful and just like me, and looked like my mother and my grandmother and my father, and I was so proud to come back to where I had come from where my ancestors. So did you do your ancestral DNA before? I did it afterwards. Okay, you did it afterwards, and it showed mostly Ghana? It was Ghana, and then it changed to Nigeria. So now it's Nigeria. And
So I'm
all
taking
these
you to
others-
Nigeria.
Yes, absolutely. It changed to that, and
Yeah.
so I'm like 90% African from
Of
all
course,
the different
of
regions,
course,
and I'm
yeah.
so proud of that. I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
but I did become a development chief, Malta now.
Okay.
I did a lot of things. Most recently in 2019, I started a scholarship program
Okay.
for children that were in kindergarten through the 8th grade.
In Ghana.
In Ghana,
Wow.
in Tolan, in the
Nice.
village from where I was in Skin.
Yeah.
And so I've done various things over there. When they passed their first family domestic violence and abuse law, I went over there and did family domestic violence and abuse training for 50 non-governmental organizations.
Wow.
There.
Oh, wow.
In the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so my plan was, after I started the scholarship program, was to go back the next year,
Okay.
which was 2020. This was when we had
COVID happened.
and all that, and so I wasn't able to do that. So I haven't been back since 2019. I do plan to travel,
Okay.
and I also plan to continue to send money
Yeah.
there. I take my chieftaincy there very seriously, but also these are my people.
Yeah.
I'm them and they are me,
Yes.
and I love them,
Yes.
and I always will, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is, finally, what is your message to those who would like to travel to the continent of Africa, whatever country, who are either worried, scared because of the narrative they've heard, or who don't feel any connection to the motherland?
It makes me take a deep breath, because I love Africa. And I was given a narrative, and it was scary,
Yeah.
you know, just because of where Ghana is located. So I had this nurse tell me when I went to get all my shots and everything, when I was going the first time, that that Ghana was the armpit. And that was scary to me.
Was the what?
Armpit.
Meaning
under your
what?
arms, up under here.
I know, but meaning what? What was that supposed to mean?
So, you know, immediately I got what she was trying to say.
Okay.
But I hit the delete button. That's what I do on people that are saying stuff that just
The
needs to be
negative,
deleted,
yeah.
you know, from the computer.
Unsubstantiated.
Just,
yes.
yeah. And so, you know, I just, you know, I went on. It was a wonderful experience. But who needs that? So I say, people, go back to the motherland, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes.
Go see who your people really are.
Yeah.
I remember taking my son Benjamin, and, you know, he was 19, I think, when I took him to Ghana. And he got, I mean, he didn't have a negative perspective because of me, but he got a whole new vision because of what they show you on TV. It's not correct. And I would say that people in Ghana are the most wonderful people, loving people, smart people, loving people that I have ever met in my life. And going there was like I was being born again. So in my life experiences, I say the most valuable experiences for me were the birth of my children and then being skinned in Ghana. Yeah.
Dr. Renee Campbell,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this time you spent with us. Are you taking new clients?
Yes.
You are? Okay. How can people reach you?
They can go to the Flourishing Peaceful Families website.
And we will tag it in the video. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been great listening to your story. Like I said, we believe very much in storytelling. It is important to tell your story before you leave this earth. Thank you for spending time with us. Until next time, everyone, this is your Quintessential Rebel. Join us for another brand new episode. But make sure to tune in on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Central Time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.